Hello, all. Welcome back. We are at core component that's primarily focused on docs framework. I'm going to give details about the docs framework that I have listed out here. In this docs framework, the one of the topics that I have included over here is docs generation transformation. How the generation transformation is happening in the Postman platform using the generative AI technology. In the traditional approach, you have APIs. Basic docs by Postman. This is the regular process that is happening even in before GenAI introduction as well. Okay, and this basic docs is extended by the manual documentation. Manually, engineer has to update that particular documentation by saying the API specification. And manual format. So whatever the sections that the document is contains, that will be formatted, and if required we can put the images or videos, the external links, everything we can embed into that one. But that has to be done by that has to be done by manually by engineers. Okay, this is the traditional process that we have before Postbot introduction. Okay, with the help of Postbot, what Postman is the planned is, what is the GenAI approach they have is, you have APIs, okay, and you have basic docs by Postman. The moment when you create the collection and along with the request, the API docs will be created by default. Okay, those docs will be replaced by the Postbot. Okay, so using the Postbot feature, GenAI assistant, you can update the docs without adding manually. Okay, you can put one common prompt. It contains all the sections, so it will provide the information about that particular endpoint based on its business functions, and it will automatically return within a fraction of a second. Okay, that's about capability of this particular Postbot. Now coming to the format. The format, everything is as usual. There will not be any auto feature they have embedded over here. And I have listed out a few enhancements. So very soon I'm going to share with the Postman team. Might be they can include. So this is the regular the process that we see for the Postman platform. This is the traditional approach, and this is the GenAI approach where the teams can adopt. Okay. What we are going to see is here. While remaining the traditional workflow, Postman has introduced leveraged on GenAI technology to generate documentation. So they are not bypassing the traditional approach. They are following the whatever the practice they have maintained. The only this in particular manual documentation, there they have adopted this particular the feature, introduced this particular feature to generate the docs based on the user prompts. So that is the core the technology of the GenAI, right? And then next, the new feature enables documentation generations of the prompts in natural language format. As I said, so it accepts the natural language format like we have seen for the generate tests, right? We have given the commands and it automatically generated default commands. The generate AI, the feature is integrated at the request level. So here they have included this particular feature at request level. Suppose if you are at some home window and trying to enter the prompts for the generating the documentation, it won't. It will just populate the links refer to these links for the generation. So the mandate is to, you have to open the Postman, you have to go to the request, and then you have to open the Postbot and enter the prompt. I'll show you in the next session how it is. Okay. So without that one, it will not, you cannot generate the docs by the Postbot. One of the key features of Postbot, enhancing the documentation preparation process through generative AI. Okay, every field, as I said, the introduction of the generative AI technology, and they are evolving month on month and releases based on the user's requirement. Same thing they have adapted here and created the documentation by using the Postbot. Okay, so let's move ahead. What are the doc structure we have? Okay, by default, Postman will not define any doc structure. You are the person to define the structure, and more or less all the any of the project or any of the customers, these are the sections mostly covers. Beyond that one, manually you have to add additional sections if anything you want. Okay, what are those sections? Here is the taxonomy. Taxonomy means the what are the sections it contains, the doc structure. The first one is a request, because this is the one there where every end user will use the endpoint and along with the base URL and send the request, right? So for that request, what are the information it includes in the doc? Okay, these are the mandatory sections based on my experience, my knowledge on the API domain, and these are the sections that we have in the document. One is request information, which contains the description. What is the description of that particular endpoint, what it does, what is the main function, and what is the base URL, and what is the endpoint it is, and endpoint's description. Those details will be mentioned over here. And then headers. Okay, so headers means additional information of that particular address, to reach a particular resource. Okay, that is the reason we call it as a headers. Okay, like in our address we are giving the pin code, right? Pin code or so and so street or so and so landmark, those these details we are giving, right? Same thing we have to give it. Okay, so that header information, default details, custom headers. Sometimes few APIs will have custom headers that is defined as per that particular project. Those headers we have to maintain, in order to use this particular endpoint. And then authorization, we have a authorization headers. There are different authentication mechanisms that Postman supports, and every application will support. So those authentication codes have to be sent through headers, otherwise this particular endpoint will not work, right? Those information. And then what are the parameters? So the authentication details means what kind of authentication it is. It is a simple authentication or 2.0 authentication, or the bearer token authentication, or some other kind of Akamai authentication, or cloud authentication, AWS authentication. Those kind of details we need to incorporate in this particular doc structure. And then parameters. Every endpoint will have a certain parameters. Okay, suppose you need to create a one book. So you have a, suppose for example, you have a one e-commerce API structure is there, and then there is a order information that you have to send the information. Okay, the structure that you are sending, that is item name, quantity, and price, all those details you are sending. But while you are querying this particular order, so you have to query with the order number. Order number is the parameter where you need to send the information. Okay, or else the title of that particular product you need to send, that is the title is the parameter. Okay, for example, in the book name, title name, you need to send it. Okay, for example, reservation, in the reservation number we are giving, the reservation number is the PNR number. That is one kind of a parameter, that particular API we are sending that information. So those are called as a the parameters that has to be included. What are the parameters this particular endpoint will support, and there is only one or two parameters will act as a query parameter, or one parameter will act as a path parameter. that I'm going to show you in the next session. Okay, and what is the body structure? Suppose you have a body is there, and what kind of structure it has. uh, I mean, what kind of a format it is, a JSON format or TXT or this kind of the format it has to be mentioned. And then what is the element types? Each element, you have a 5 elements are there. Each element, what is the type? Is it integer, string, or boolean, or those kind of details? It has to be mentioned. Okay, so that will be useful while you are building or while you are modifying that particular request in the future, as well as to understand by whoever is the persons that who are entering into the your team. Okay, that is one way. So the next is response. Okay, whatever the request that you are sending, right, that information is available. No, the response, the information that you are getting back. Okay, what kind of information you are getting, whether it is you are getting in the JSON format or TXT format, what kind of details, that also have to be mentioned, so that it will be documented and can be useful for the future enhancement purpose. What are those? Typically it contains the one is headers. Sometimes few APIs will demand to validate particular response headers values as well. Okay, it's a need basis. Okay, that's why we should know the key headers of this particular API or endpoint. We should know. Okay, that has to be, that information will be specified in the API specification doc. Okay, wherever it is that projects are maintaining that particular resource or document, that particular specification, it it will be mentioned there. Okay, and then next, the structure and the types. Okay, the response, what is a type? Okay, JSON or that kind of format, and then each element, that kind of format will be there, and structure, what it is there, how many it will. Okay, if I am giving the PNR number, what kind of details it will retrieve, those details will be mentioned over here with the examples that we have to ask Postbot, hey, generate the examples with this one, that will put. Okay, and then codes, messages and code details. Okay, suppose error codes, suppose you have send the request, that means it gives the code back as a 200. That means whatever the endpoint you have hit, that is correct, that reaches the destination, that is the indication. Suppose 201, that means that is the one code, that means the entry is created in the database, so that will give the. Suppose you have a 400, 401, 404, these are the error codes. One is 404 is the resource not found, or 4W is the bad request, 401 is the entity not found. This kind of error codes are available. So if that is specific to the your endpoint that you are working, if endpoint is not supporting that kind of error code, it will not mention. It will mention only the error codes it will supports. Okay, so that will be available in the your API specification, that you have ensure to capture in the doc structure as well. Okay, and then next one is, this is the additional information, purely optional. Okay, one is collections. Okay, you can you have if you see my the previous in the playlist, I have given the one API and shared the link also. In that one, if you open that one, it has a clear structure will be there. Okay, I have created one structure. Okay, collection I created. Under collection we have a get, and then create, where the post calls will be there, and then manage, where you will have a update of the particular endpoints and deletion of those endpoints based on your requirement that you have to organize, or else based on your business function. Suppose order, what is the order? In the order module, you should have the 3 sub modules. One is your get, second one is your create, third one is manage. This is way of structuring the entire API suite, so that it will be useful when you expand that suite from 1 to 100. You can easily make a suite and run it on demand basis, particular module. Like that, you need to follow the particular standard, so that it will be easily manageable. So in order to mention, suppose you wanted to give the description of that collection or a description of that particular folder, you have to manually, you have to do it this one. This is purely optional. So based on the requirement, you may include. Okay, one is variables. What are the collection variables and global variables? Suppose you wanted to know that information, you wanted to capture so that stakeholders be aware what kind of variables this particular API test suite uses. Okay, and then validations. Yeah, these validations are, again, it is optional to the endpoint. Suppose you wanted to keep the high level use cases of for this particular endpoint, you can mention it. Okay, so at a top level or folder level, you can mention. Okay, so this is the typical doc structure that we have while we are working on any of the API test engagements. Okay, so I hope you got the doc structure here, and move on to add docs by Postbot. How the Postbot will generate the docs. I'll just give you overview. Okay, so prerequisite, we have a Postman collection, the request suite is there. Postbot you have, it will be integrated with this particular platform. What it will provide? Okay, the first one is, as I told you, implement a context awareness mechanism to understand the current request. Okay, you have to open the current request and make aware the Postbot learn that particular request, and it will generate the documentation based on your need. That you have to make it. Otherwise, it will just simply populate the links to refer documentation by the Postman blogs. Okay, so you have to open, it's mandatory to open the request and then start the Postbot. And the users provide prompts in natural language to the AI assistant. So you don't you have to provide the prompt in the natural language format. Okay, like, hey, add docs, okay, or modify docs or delete so on information. But as of now, we are looking at add docs, where mention these statements like add the request information of this particular endpoint, or response information of this endpoint, or authentication of this particular endpoint. Like that, you need to put the prompt so that it will add. So default command to generate documentation using the Postbot. Suppose you have deleted everything and you wanted to, so this particular option enable only when that particular request doesn't have any of the documentation. So that if you click on that particular default, so what it does is it will generate the only basic documentation for that particular endpoint. Okay, and documentation is generated or appended to docs by the AI assistant. Yeah, there is some glitch over here, but it is clearly creating the docs based on our prompts. But updating, it is taking, it is not giving the accurately, but it is adding the existing documentation. Okay, so I have listed out few feature enhancements. So let me see the response from the Postman side. Okay, and then GenAI enhances the manual creation process. This is what project execution said the stakeholders will look at it, how it can enhances the process, how it can augment the process. Okay, earlier to maintain or to write a doc separately, we need to spend certain amount of time to write the documentation. But using this one, if it is a new API, and you can generate the required documentation of that particular API in a fraction of seconds. Okay, so that's all I have in this particular session. And in this docs framework will contain the three things. One is your traditional versus GenAI approach, and the second one is the doc structure, and third one is how the Postbot located and what kind of features it will provide for generating the docs. And in the next session, and I'll catch you in the next session. Thank you.